Awkward listeners. Before we get into today's episode, I have some exciting news. The Awkward Insurance Podcast is headed to the Big Apple June 7th and 8th for the world's largest InsurTech community event for connecting industry executives, entrepreneurs, and investors. I'm talking about the 2023 InsurTech Insights USA Conference in New York. We can't wait to catch all the awkward takes and hottest innovations disrupting our already dynamic industry. Be sure to use code AWKWARD25 for a 25% discount on your InsurTech Insights registration. That's the word awkward and the number 25. And bonus feature, our 50th episode will be released while we're there, and we've got big things planned. Like Awkward Insurance on Facebook and make sure your podcasts are set to automatic downloads so that you don't miss our biggest giveaway yet. Toodles! Welcome back to Awkward Insurance. I am so happy that you all are here with us today. Our little Facebook group is just growing, and you guys are starting to interact on there. I just love getting notifications. Lots of fun stuff happening over there. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, Awkward Insurance, please go ahead and do that today. This episode is one that we're going to work through in the best way possible, but it might be a little dicey. It has a lot to do with catastrophe planning and storms. Of course, you guys know, Ash, you know, I'm here in Central Arkansas, and March 31st, we had a pretty significant storm event. I'm going to try not to cry about it. I'm already feeling emotional. We'll just awkwardly laugh our way through it. So we had a pretty significant storm event here in Arkansas, and we've got a wonderful guest that we've got on with us today, Sydney Hoffmans. She is with iTrust Insurance Group, has been in the industry for over a decade, and we will introduce her in just a moment. But Ash, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I mean, this is definitely going to be a tougher subject to talk about, especially because you were right in the thick of things. And frankly, because I don't watch the news, obviously, and I live under a rock, you had texted me that day because I was nagging you about some sort of policy language. And you texted me, I don't know, I might not have a place to live tomorrow. And I thought you were kidding because it just came out of nowhere. Like there was no context to your comment. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then literally 30 minutes later, you're sending me these videos. And then I was crying for you because it was just absolutely terrifying.
So welcome to my life. I err on the side of drama. Like I am either super calm or fully amped up. There is no in between.
Okay, listen, after the videos and the pictures that you sent me that were just so close to your house, you had every right to have been dramatic in that moment. I don't even think it counts as dramatic because it was actually something traumatizing that was happening.
Yeah. Sydney, welcome to Awkward Insurance. We can have some fun too. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. We are so happy to have you here. I got to meet you in person for the first time at an association event in Arkansas just last week, and it was so much fun. And girl, you look like you were in your element. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, Dustin. Hi, Ash. Great to meet you virtually, Ash and Dustin. Great to see you again. It was a fun convention. We won't talk about the fact that we were teamed up as Bago mates. We did not.
Okay.
We did not last too long in that tournament, but it was great fun to get to chat with you. And it's always a fun time to be part of the insurance community. Those opportunities to round our crazy crew together and celebrate and talk about the hard stuff as well. You know, having one just a couple weeks after such a large scale weather event. The energy was still good, but we're also aware of what we're all dealing with and what our customers are as well. So it was nice just to have that mental reset with everyone.
Oh my gosh, I agree with that so much. Having that event so close after such a large loss here in Arkansas, it was needed. It was so needed to just be there with everybody. But let's talk about Bago. Ashley, do they call it Bago or cornhole in Ohio?
I was just about to get on your case. It's not Bago, it's cornhole.
That's what my husband says. I haven't taken the opportunity to Google it yet to find out if this is like a regional thing that you call it something different, whether you're from the South or from the North. But he's like, it's not Bago, it's cornhole. I'm like, I've always called it Bago.
I think they established rules that It's supposed to be a wood board and it's a little bit larger. We were playing on these tiny plastic boards, so maybe that's the distinguish. I don't know. I really don't know. I've always called it bago, but I'll take to cornhole, whatever we need to call it. Make the people happy.
It was my very first time playing. I had never played. I literally felt like a little girl in PE class for the first time trying to figure out how to play kickball or something. It was truly a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed meeting you there. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a second generation agent. My father started his career as a nationwide exclusive and he went on to open an independent agency. So I grew up in the business. I did not have my eyes set on pursuing a career in insurance, but decided to get my PNC license when I was in college, worked for a shelter agent. At a PIA event, to bring them up again, I had an impromptu interview with a regional commercial carrier a few months later and ended up getting an underwriting internship following college. At that point, I was deciding whether I wanted to go into graduate school, law school. I didn't really have my plan figured out, so I figured an internship may be a good way to blow the summer by. And I ended up really enjoying it. Went on to work at a large independent agency in Northwest Arkansas as a commercial account manager, then went and worked as a marketing rep for another commercial insurance company, and then joined the family business after. And I've been here at iTrust Insurance Group for almost 6 years now. I've worn just about every hat. We're a small family agency, so I started doing commercial marketing, then I did personal and commercial service work. Now I'm producing and took a small ownership position last year. So it's been a wild ride and I've enjoyed every moment.
I love that. I mean, I feel like that just very much reminds me of my story. Like, I feel like everybody's like, I don't have any interest in going into the family business or into insurance. And then, one day they're just like, oh, help get us through the summer. Or like, you have to do something. So you try it. And then you're like, oh, man, this is awesome. So like, I wish more people could get pulled into it.
Absolutely. Feels like most of us who end up here did not intend on insurance. We just fall into it at some stage or another. But what's so great is there's so many different avenues to pursue within our industry, which I think is a huge misconception for the young people as they're, deciding career paths. So there's so much to do, so much to get and give within the industry. And I've got such a passion for it.
Oh my gosh. So that's one thing that I didn't even think about is the two of you have got something in common in terms of, your family owned agencies and getting roped in that way. What did you start in college as? What was your intention or your path in college?
I was a public relations major in college. I'd always been a part of journalism. The high school I went to had a great journalism program. I never did broadcast, but all the written types. So went to school and pursued public relations. I was the editor of the University of Arkansas yearbook for a year while I was up there. I've always been interested in a lot of things, but my interests are ever changing. So it was hard for me to nail down exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be in a position to learn from people. PR was really great about that. Journalism was great. Insurance has been great. So just getting to hear people's stories, help them be heard, help them find solutions for problems. All of that is really engaging and fulfilling for me.
Yeah, I love that. Well, speaking of getting to hear people's stories and help them through their solutions, let's go back to our topic path here. Sydney, tell us a little bit about your experience on March 31st.
Well, I, like you, assume when weather comes, we're used to it. We deal with every season in the span of a week here in Arkansas, and tornadoes certainly bring paranoia, but being in Little Rock, I assumed it's hilly enough. It's not been an issue, or at least not for decades. It's not really on my radar personally of being something to truly fear. I grew up in Saline County and we had plenty of close calls growing up, but being here in Little Rock, I've always felt safe. So that Friday, it was a busy Friday. The end of the week always is. I was juggling a B&I renewal and some other account renewals. I ended up taking a late lunch that day, around 1:45 or so. So I went home. I thought, well, we're due for some severe weather as the day moves on. I'm going to film a quick video. So I went in my backyard and filmed a video about tornado prevention tips for your home and for your vehicles. Filmed it, posted it, dropped my small dog who's usually at the office with me. We're dog friendly here and I always have him, but I ran him home with me for lunch that day, left him kenneled, came back to the office, and as I was pulling in the parking lot, sirens started to go off. So I came inside and the rest of our team was watching TV and we could see that we were in the trajectory. It was a little west of us by that point, But we met as a team, decided that we were going to go ahead, finish up what we were doing, and try to leave so that we could get home, because we figured our homes may be a little bit safer than the office at that point. So we started closing down all that we were doing and went to leave. And as we walked outside the front door, in the midst of this, the power goes out. So we've lost service. Service is terrible in this area anyway. Power's out. We don't have a way to contact people. We decide to make a run for it. And as we're exiting the front door, we look to the right and there's the tornado, not even 3 blocks from us. So we hightail back inside. We shelter here at the office. We're very, very, very frazzled at that point. And my father especially is frazzled. We both live in the general direction that the tornado was taking. And I have younger sisters. We have about a 19-year age difference. And they were at home sheltering in place. And at that point, he just wanted to find a way to get home to them. So we sheltered here. He goes to leave, loses his key fob, and his battery falls out. And fortunately, there was a friend a couple doors down that was able to take him home. But it wasn't really on my radar at that point that my house was possibly in the path as well. I was just trying to calm down the rest of our team, get us settled so that we could go home, so that we could set up shop and start dealing with what we knew were going to be an influx of claims. So I left the office, and on my way home, went down Cantrell Road. I live off Cantrell, and it was shut down. And I didn't know what was going on. Service was terrible. I couldn't get anyone on the phone. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try and go down Reservoir Road. And I'm getting into specifics about Little Rock, but these are all areas that were hit. Essentially, every single path I tried to take to get to my house was blocked off. And my fear is just increasing as time passes because I can't get anyone to answer the phone. And I don't have children, but I have 4 animals, 2 dogs and 2 cats, and they were all at my house. And at that point, I just want to get home and make sure they're okay. I was finally able to get my next door neighbor on the phone, and she told me to get prepared because our entire street had been hit. So I'm in full panic. It took over an hour and a half for me to get what's usually an 8-9 minute drive home. And fortunately, I found one of my dogs at the front door. My small dog, who I'd kenneled a half hour before, was okay. And the cats took a while to find, but they were okay. My house was not as okay, but I made it out a lot better than my direct neighbors. But you're stuck in a bubble when you run into a traumatic situation like that. And I didn't have service or connection to anyone to know the full extent of what Central Arkansas had been hit. It was just my street, my community. So I was trying to do what I could to help neighbors, but also assess my situation. And it feels like you're walking through a war zone. There's no way to have a sense of what's going on. Hours went by. I was so disconnected and caught in my own situation, I couldn't make sense of the rest of it. And my partner teaches elementary art. She was at school lockdown and was able to get home a little while after. And we were just stuck in that destruction. And then figuring out how to pivot from that and also be there for customers. And I could just see my phone going off with notifications of voicemails left at the office where we don't have power, and all our employees going home to homes who don't have power, not knowing how to be there for people who are very much in the most panic situations they've ever been in. I was, and I work in insurance where you would think I'd be a little bit equipped on what to expect and how to handle a situation like this. So it was incredibly traumatic, not something I ever want to go through again. And even a few weeks later, it's still traumatic dealing with the fallout. But the community support was so incredible. The people in our Central Arkansas community, going to what you said, Dustin, are so incredible. The outpouring of support for our street and for the communities is what has kept us strong and what has kept us moving forward. So as difficult as this was, it's been such a humbling experience to know how much goodness and kindness still exists as well.
All the feels, to be honest. So happy that you're okay. So happy that your team is okay. And your animals, I can't imagine, when you have kids, that's kind of traumatic, but at least they know how to use their mouths and find their way someplace if something happens. The animals, on the other hand, they just don't know what's going on, bless their little baby hearts. I think that was something that was really interesting and unique too, is like the quickness of everything on social media to start pulling together everything, including, oh my gosh, in like hours, there was one Facebook group about lost and found pets from the storm that had over 7,000 followers within like an hour or two. It was insane to see just how quickly everybody could pull those kinds of resources together and start communicating. So God for social media in terms of that, as long as you can connect to internet or, something somewhere, because the cell service sure sucks. So walk us through, I can relate to you're trying to figure out what comes next in terms of insurance. My husband is a first responder. So, of course, his mind is going in a different direction, too. He's a first responder. This is what they do. He was in Little Rock, stuck there, couldn't get back home because there was debris all over the interstates in both directions, but then suddenly got an all call to go and help other agencies that are close by. So at the same time that you're trying to make sure that you're okay, your stuff is okay, your fur babies are okay, your neighbors are okay, you're also going, oh my gosh, my clients need me too. And that's like the biggest thing for us as insurance professionals, is we're there when our clients need us. And sometimes we rarely think about, well, what if we're one of our clients that need us too, In terms of your office status, how quickly were you guys able to, or did you have a plan? Let's start with that. Did the office have a plan? Once everybody was found to be okay and safe, what was the plan going forward to get everything up and running as quickly as possible while also staying sound of mind to your own needs as well?
We were maybe a textbook definition of the small agency that doesn't have a plan and has learned how important a plan is, because we were just flying by the seat of our pants. I mean, we couldn't reach our customers back that Friday. We had been hit, power was out, service was out. We couldn't communicate to people. And every home, mine was the only one of our team that was directly hit, but everybody else was just on the edge. So it's had us sitting here thinking, gosh, in terms of our office location versus where we all live, had this taken a slight turn, it could have been even more disastrous. But for us, it was getting to people as quickly as we could. So we were going, and fortunately, between customers and friends, we have enough resources to temporarily set up shop places so that we could make contact with people. And we spent that weekend trying to do that as much as possible. I would go turn my hotspot on in my car and call people and file claims, and then go cry and deal with my own situation, rinse and repeat. When we got back to the office, we were without Wi-Fi for a little bit longer, and we had hotspots and things to move through that process. But it was tough in the first couple days. And on top of that, we have 2 employees that were both brought on last year. So this is really the first wide-scale weather event that either of them had gone through. And I wasn't here on a consistent basis, so they didn't have me for all the guidance that they maybe would have had otherwise. So it was a huge, huge growth process for them both. And I think they've come out the other end as much better agents and much more equipped to handle the compassion, but also the understanding and education that comes with handling claims and helping your customers navigate that road. And it's been the same for me. Until you are in the middle of a big claim yourself, you just don't fully understand how it goes. I've hit a deer, I've had a sewer line collapse, I've had my own small claim stories over time, but this is just so above and beyond anything that I've personally ever gone through. But having that experience and being able to empathize and relate to customers in a direct way like that, I think has helped strengthen relationships and given them assurances that we're going to be here and help them see this process through.
I'm just letting you guys take this away because I'm just like, I'm getting choked up left and right here. And I'm sure I have examples that I can hop in with, but it's nothing, nothing that I've ever personally experienced. I can't even fathom, like I was getting choked up when you said that your dog was at the front door. Cause I'm like, I just dropped my dogs off at daycare today and I was like sad doing that. And it's just, I had a client who had a cabin that his family built together and it burnt down to the ground. And my first reaction was, I need to go up there. Like, can I do anything for him right now? Absolutely not, because it's burnt to the ground, but I can at least stand there. And I'm just thinking like, that was taxing. But like now add on top of that, had my cabin just burned down and I have to walk over there and now be strong for him. I mean, it takes a special kind of person to be a good agent, and to be able to truly empathize and give the clients what they need while maybe turning around then and breaking down your car and then putting on a smile and getting back out and saying, let me help you. So I don't know how you did it. And I commend you. And it sounds like like you said, your community was incredible because everybody just got together and you figure it out. That's all you can do. I mean, I don't know if it's like in my old age now or something, like I'm sitting here thinking, thank God that you guys are safe. Like, yeah, I would never want to go through that. And I know it's not going to be easy to put things back together, but just thank God you were safe and your family was safe. And it's just unreal.
Let's talk for a minute. Sydney, you made the comment that it was kind of fly by the seat of your pants because, kind of like I hinted at before, as independent agents, as insurance agents, you don't even have to be independent. You could be captive, whatever. It's a service role. I spent a considerable amount of time in the agency that I worked for prior to coming to the National Alliance doing cat planning. Of course, we had a larger corporate office, and it was one of the things that we were required to do in terms of we had offices in all 50 states. So each state needed, or each office needed to submit their catastrophe plan back to the corporate office to make sure that we knew how to continue operations. And now that I kind of think back on it, there were parts of it that were kind of preemptive of, yeah, we'll be the ones that get hit. And so you would divert business to a secondary office that can take over those roles for you. And you've got a reciprocal agreement with them in terms of, if we're down, this is what you do. But I guess I never really actually processed that at the time that my clients were going through a loss, I would very likely be going through a loss too, because we tend to insure the people that are around us, that are closest to us, and they're very often very personal relationships. So now that you've kind of been through the fly by the seat of your pants, and I'll be more than happy to contribute from the agency side some like quick best practices in terms of getting a cat plan up and going quickly, because it can take some time to develop. What is your office doing now to prepare for that transition of business when it's like, okay, not just our clients are the one hit and this is how we're all going to pull together. This role is now, going to be on claims solely dedicated to this, and you're going to do that. There's that type of situation. But then what about when your office, your people, your team are also part of the catastrophe as well?
I think it's a really important conversation. And I don't think our agency is the only agency out there that was ill-equipped for this.
Oh, no.
You're
sure.
a little bit disillusioned to think, okay, we're here to help service customers, but I'm not really thinking about myself personally or even the business itself. And then in the span of a couple minutes, that all gets blown up. So I think for us, having a strong team that communicates, that's incredibly essential regardless of where you're at in your business venture or what kind of situations you're dealing with, but constant line of communication, because you'll find yourself in these situations where communication's coming from all directions. People are panicked. They want answers immediately. Some are more understanding than others about how this process is going to go, but you're fielding it from all over. And maybe not every person on your team has the right answers, but it's important to be communicating and making sure that all customers are being touched and that they're being checked on. And that was the most important thing for us once we were able to really stabilize again and come together as a team to make sure that we were reaching out, because these are our community members. Some customers are long-term clients of ours. They've been with us for decades, and they're a couple blocks down from our office, and places that were hit incredibly hard. We had about 55 claims that we're dealing with now between personal and commercial.
Oh, wow.
More than a handful of total loss situations. Mine, fortunately, is not that. It's still a big claim, but I fared better than many others within our customer base. And so being there to help them, because what a lot of people don't realize is how slow the claims process can be. People are upset that adjusters are being flown in from other states. And so it's talking to them about the fact that these are catastrophe teams dedicated for situations like this, and that they have families too. And that when disasters like this happen, it's really hard to get to the places you need to be quickly. Just think about the outpouring of support we had in Central Arkansas. There were so many people who wanted to help, but being able to access the areas that needed to help was a whole other issue. And same goes with adjusters, some that could not access streets for days, if not weeks after this tornado because of how damaging areas were. So it's just setting expectations, empathizing, but also communicating and having an understanding, having those conversations with our carrier representatives as well, so that we can help our customers understand what's to come and helping us as a team understand what's to come. So that was incredibly important for us. And also now having the realistic outlook that this could happen again, and we need to have a better plan in place about where to go so that we can touch base with people as quickly as possible. We did the best we could, but there's certainly improvements to be had there. Making sure at the least that you have claims contact numbers readily available for your customers and posted in as many places as possible so that if they can't reach you directly, or if not for a period of time, there are other ways to get the information that they need. Making sure that as an agency, you have cloud-based backup for your customer information as well. Because had that not been the case and we'd been wiped out, we would have been in a really, really difficult position. So it's just making sure that processes and procedures are fine-tuned so that if you're in a position where you have to pivot really quickly, you're equipped to do that.
Yeah. See, those are some things that I wrote down in terms of what, I did for the portability or for the CAT planning. The very first one that you mentioned was communication, of course, with your team, having that phone tree, if you will, the old school phone tree, who's going to call who and continue that because it's really hard to communicate as it is. So having that communication plan in place in terms of who's going to call each team member, or if, one of the things that we did have was kind of a CAT phone line where each team member could call into the CAT phone line, leave a message based on their circumstance or whether or not they were hit or affected or, whatever it was. And then there was a message that would be waiting there for them to let them know that if the office needed to pivot to a different location, that's where they would go, or, that kind of thing. So that's an option too, is to have some way for the team to call into something rather than several people trying to call out. Because as you know, once the power goes down, once those phone poles are knocked to the ground, once the cell phone towers are taken out, it's really hard to communicate in that kind of way. So you mentioned the communication. One that happened to us at Brown and Brown that was unexpected was we had already started working on going to mobile desk stations to where we were using higher powered laptops, and you could take them home if you needed to. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but the no rain flood that happened in central Arkansas, where it was a lot of snow melt and stuff that was happening in states north of us. And then it just overloaded our river and our riverbanks. But Brown and Brown is down there on the river. And so we ended they were closing down levees and everything else. And those waters were rising up really high. And incidentally, we were like, oh, well, we're mobile now. We, we have laptops that we can take home instead of having to, find a second location to work from, because our office building, the office managers did close the building down in terms of safety. So knowing how you can create portability, whether it's for maybe 2 or 3 persons in your office, it doesn't have to be everybody, but create portability for somebody in terms of that. So having or knowing where you guys might meet up, knowing where that second location is, and make sure you've even got a third location just in case your second location is also taken out too. So there's your communication and your portability, and then knowing where you guys are going to meet up next, as well as your backup of your client list. That can be something so easy as printing out a manual list that's going to look like a huge 3-ream binder of every single client that you have. And I would recommend organizing them city, if you will, so that way you can find their location much quicker than having to find them through an alphabetical order kind of situation. Or as you mentioned, having a cloud-based backup in order to be able to access your information much easier so that you don't have to worry about whether or not your local servers were damaged or power surges that might take out your local servers too. And then those numbers, not just the company claim numbers, and maybe setting up that especially if you've got VoIP, voice over internet, and setting up a dedicated line to where your clients can call in and get some quick claims numbers, but also your local repairman type numbers. If something is damaged in your office, instead of having to go through all of your contacts and figure out which contractors you work with the best or the most, or who might be within your own client base, having those numbers available to you as well. One thing that I really loved seeing in terms of insurance was the catastrophe trailers that came in. So all the different carriers, they brought in their mobile homes, if you will, or their trailers, but also the insurance associations that were here. The Big I and the PIA of Arkansas, they were both posting on their social medias. Here's an entire list of claims numbers because, like you said, there's a lot of agencies out there that may not have thought about cat planning before. And now they're suddenly like, oh my gosh, what was the number for, Safeco claims or whatever? So here's a claims list for you, which is where I want to pivot to Ashley here for a second. Being that you are wholly engrossed in all things insurance associations, in what ways does the OIA or other insurance associations that you're familiar with, how do you work to help your agents and their client base when these types of catastrophic events happen?
I mean, the best example for this would be, I know it's not really necessarily catastrophic, but when it is, I guess, in a way. But when COVID hit, obviously there was a lot of questions around, loss of income and business interruption and all of those topics. And essentially that's how our weekly webinar Wednesdays were born, because they started out with, okay, we're going to review this topic this week, and we're going to talk about, business income, or if there's special event policies, or now people are, delivering food, and is there coverage for that? So what we do is just essentially try to keep a pulse on everything that's coming out from all of the different companies, and, who is providing refunds and who is doing what, and, to help, or are they setting up stands places, that kind of stuff. And we're trying to navigate all of the confusing things for our clients and, disseminate what's the important pieces that they need to know about right now, and then getting that out to them, whether it is via email or it is via webinar or just us calling them directly. Like you said, and trust me, Sydney, you're not the only person that was not prepared for this. I mean, we back home, I feel like, I don't remember, it was early on in my career at the agency, we had back-to-back tornadoes back home. And that was like, growing up, I don't ever remember seeing tornadoes. So I'm like, oh, we're getting a tornado. Like, it's not going to really do any damage. And fortunately, while we didn't have total losses by any means, there was tons and tons of, obviously, roof damage and then trees. So we started getting an influx of phone calls of, all right, do I have coverage for my trees? So it's like, you learn the first time, okay, let's go through each of our 6 companies. Let's read the policy language and let's have these questions ready. Is there tree coverage, if it doesn't hit something? And is there going to be food coverage if it spoils? And how many days before it kicks in? So it's like, you hate to have to learn, trial by fire, but it's now this will better prepare you 100% moving forward. But yeah, so I mean, again, Dustin, sorry, I ping pong all over the place, but associations, us specifically, and especially because a lot of us here have been agents or have been in an underwriting position or worked at a company, we try to pick out what we think would be most important if we were in their shoes, and get that information to them as quickly and as simply as possible.
Absolutely. I think that's everything that we said. I didn't even think about the education piece of it though. And you're right. I mean, a catastrophe doesn't just have to be a huge major event. It could be something that, maybe the power grid was overloaded and, everything shuts down, and brownouts or blackouts or whatever you want to call them. Having that backup plan to know what you're going to do. And then, like you were mentioning, Ashley, the education piece from associations or any insurance partners for that matter. I know carriers do the same thing. When catastrophes happen, they start putting out like all these kind of infographics and everything else about how to file a claim. Or not only that, I think I saw a lot of carrier infographics circling social media of just like individuals, how to be prepared. But I would say, one of the first things is that if your office doesn't have a catastrophe preparedness plan, the very first step you can take is to start writing one. It doesn't matter where you start. There's going to be lots of things that'll come up. And you guys, we are risk managers. Once we get outside of our little bubble box for a second, we can figure out what needs to go in that cat plan. You don't have to do a Google search. You don't need to call big companies and corporations to figure out what they have in their cat plan. But once you start thinking about it, what are you going to immediately need? And then what maybe are you going to need for the next week, or maybe 2 weeks, or maybe a couple of months in case you can't get back in to your office? And how are you going to help your clients? And don't worry about the new business at that point, because you got a lot of other things you got to handle from that moment on. So the first step is to just do one. Like, I sat down here at home and started writing down all of our insurance numbers. I started writing down who would I call to do of course, all that stuff is in my phone. And you'd think, okay, well, I've got all my contacts in my phone. I don't know if you thought about this or not, but a tornado doesn't care if your phone is in your pocket or in your hand, it's going to take it. It will send it someplace else and you might not have it there for you. So make sure you've got this information somewhere where you can access it in the worst case scenario, but even in the moments where you're just like, this is a lot and I've got a binder that can help me get through this in a way. I loved the way our community pulled together. I honestly really did. I love the way that they're still pulling together. I am so happy that you're okay. Tell us a little bit. I know we're getting kind of, or we might be a little over time here, but how's your personal claim going?
It's going well. It's been slow moving, as many have, because it takes a while to accumulate all the things. I mean, one of the most stressful things for a lot of people is contents inventory lists, because we have the contractors and the adjuster to help with the dwelling itself. And yeah, there's some back and forth there about what needs to be tackled and in what order, and it's all scary, but you can bring people on to help you wade through that. But contents inventory is really difficult, especially when your entire house is gone
Yeah.
and you've accumulated belongings, family heirlooms, so many things. How do you put a value to some of what you own? How do you put it together and make sure you have it all accounted for? That's been one of the most stressful things for customers, and it was stressful for me as well. Fortunately, I had access or visibility to what was gone for the most part, but that was tough. Finding a rental situation was very tough.
Mm,
You think about how
yeah.
many properties were damaged in central Arkansas, how many people didn't even carry insurance and are having to rely on FEMA and other programs. And I can't imagine the stresses that they're carrying. At least having the assurance that you have insurance to help you through this is such a comfort. But still, it was a wild race to find options. And there weren't a lot. And price gouging is a real thing. We dealt with a lot of that, or landlords that are unwilling to be flexible on lease terms. And there was a lot of back and forth. It took a couple weeks before we finally got our situation set. And we don't even walk into our rental house until May 1. So we got it set.
Oh
Fortunately,
gosh.
I have family close by and I've been able to stay at my dad's house. That's been wonderful. Not everybody has that. So people are couch hopping or hoping that they're not overstaying their welcome with friends and family members. So that can be really tough. I mean, you lose the comfortability of your home and now you're encroaching on other people's space and hoping that that's okay and trying to figure out where you're going to be for however long of time you're going to be there. It's very unsettling. It's hard to stay mentally set and feel like you're organized in any way when your home situation is the complete opposite. So that in and of itself is incredibly mentally draining. The dwelling, we'll see. It takes time, but it's now figuring out what needs to be done, ordering supplies. I mean, I've got lots of windows to order, and it's going to take 12 plus weeks before they arrive, and trying to get roofers scheduled and get all the materials when everyone's in need of the same materials. Figuring out how long realistically this is going to take for us all is incredibly stressful. So I'm taking it day by day. I'm in a much more
Yeah.
positive place than I was the first couple weeks afterward. It was really emotionally draining to be in my situation and then take a break from that to help other people navigate through their situation. So it was just a lot all the time, and it still feels that way. But I am using this as an opportunity to grow as a professional, and I think that it's going to help me in the long run. So we'll get through it. And the community, as we've said 100 times, is helping us get through it. I mean, the support is incredible. So I've never been more grateful to be in this profession and more grateful to live where I do than having gone through this.
I agree wholeheartedly. Without going into any coverage details, that additional living expense is one that every agent who's ever been through a catastrophe knows just how important it is and just how broad you want that language to be. Because at the time of a catastrophe, everybody is competing for the same resources, and it takes you a lot longer to get put back the way you were than if it was a one-off, like fire situation or something like that.
Absolutely.
Additional living expense is a critical component. I would much rather have one that said you've got actual costs incurred rather than you've only got 12 months, because it could be 12 months or longer before some houses are fully repaired
Oh, very
based
easily.
on
Very
yeah,
easily.
based on the limited resources. Sydney, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't even know how to close this one out. Ashley, do you have an idea of how to close such a heavy topic?
Yeah. I mean, but seriously, just thank you to both of you, obviously Dustin and Sydney, for sharing your stories, because like you said, it's not often that the agent is going through the catastrophe alongside their clients. And I think it's really important that people understand, hey, this is a lot. Like, you think it's a lot, but then be the agent that's going through it as well. So it's like you said, you have a positive attitude about it now. It's giving you a different perspective, and for as much as you possibly can, you're trying to learn from it and grow from it. And I commend you for that, because I probably wouldn't be as positive right now, knowing my emotional roller coaster that I go through. So I think it's incredible that you did that. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
Absolutely. It's awkward, I guess, to say that this has been a fun conversation, but it has been. And I appreciate you both allowing me to come on and talk with you today.
We're going to have you back for a much lighter and more fun episode.
Yeah.
But
Sounds great.
This was a very needed episode. I think there's a lot of information here, that even wading through some of the emotions, there are going to be a lot of people that'll go, oh, we have not had this conversation at our office and we need to. Or maybe I've not had this conversation with my spouse about what we do here at home and we need to. So thank you so much for being here. And if you're still hanging around and listening to us, thank you for being here too. And toodles, everybody. Thanks for hanging out and listening to another Awkward Insurance Conversation.
If you haven't already, be sure to join the Awkward Insurance Facebook community. We have an amazing group of people on there.
And for more episodes, head over to the National Alliance website at scic.com. Now go forth and be awkward. Toodles!
That's awkward.